Hey, McBain, I'm a big fan, but your last movie really sucked.
I know. There were script problems from day one.
Yeah, I'll say. Magic ticket my ass, McBain.
Last Action Hero is tough to overstate. It's like if a train wreck ran out of gas on some train tracks and then a train hit it. Infamous could describe his production history like Inconvenient could describe global nuclear war. The first screenplay Zach Penn and Adam Leff ever wrote was a fairly dark parody of over-the-top 80s action called Extremely Violent. Chris Moore brought it from obscurity into a bidding war with Arnie himself interested in playing his proxy, but as the decimal point on the price tag kept bouncing right, Peace of Mind dictated assaulting the script with a more seasoned hand. Classic Hollywood irony, that hand belonged to Shane Black, the man whose previous popcorn prose had specifically inspired the parody. He basically wound up with the job of spoofing his own material. After he and William Goldman had both potato retouched or mangled the script, John McTiernan took over with further rewrites before a frantic shoot led to an absurdly rushed post-production period. McTiernan and company were forced to turn around a movie that had to balance itself precariously between legit action and farce in about 3 weeks. Mounting paranoia from producers led to some shrewd marketing tactics in the vein of throw more money at it. Given the disastrous test screening, slapping an ad-free movie on the side of a rocket almost makes sense. At least in space, no one can hear focus groups scream. But the launch was delayed, which was just the icing on the cake, leaving the now desperate producers clinging helplessly to a single unwavering determination. The last thing it seemed they had any control over. This movie would come out on June 18th, damn it. A week after Jurassic Park. Damn it. Oh yeah, fair competition. I mean, come on, Steven Spielberg and dinosaurs, how much money could that make? Well, as it turns out, all of the money. This is where Last Action Hero and I intersected, also thanks to Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park was, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this, the first movie that ever consumed my life. I wanted everything to do with it. The toys, the posters, the McDonald's cups, the collectible 4-page informational hardcovers distributed at gas stations. It was the first time a movie was ever more than a movie. While it stole 99.9% of Last Action Hero's potential business, Jurassic Park primed me to embrace its strained in-jokiness. Because at the time, anything to do with intertextuality and postmodernism just blew my mind. I didn't have the lexicon to describe any of it, but I knew I was seeing something new and exciting, to me. The idea of Arnold playing a parody of himself in a movie felt deliciously subversive. And coming on the wake of a movie I would have been willing to legally marry, something steeped in film iconography to the point of being embarrassingly self-congratulatory, was pretty much exactly what I needed. I just joined the club. This was huge. I got it now. I was in. And public opinion didn't matter. It was harder to access anyway. The internet was pretty much just a way for me to look up pictures of dinosaurs, and that isn't even a really weird euphemism. So it took years of blissful ignorance before I was disillusioned with the fact the Last Action Hero wasn't so much universally adored as thrown under the bus by everyone from writer to director to audience. And that stung. This being a holdover of blind childhood infatuation, my arguments were reciprocally unconvincing. Why is Last Action Hero awesome? The answer was because it is awesome. That was it. But that can't be it, because the whole reason I'm here reading these words into a microphone or syncing them up to some vaguely related clip is because that's never it. So recently I rewatched Last Action Hero with an eye to finally qualifying my praise in irrefutable terms. But something happened. Last Action Hero, it didn't suck, but the reasons for it being a mess were plain as day, and I guess that's just older and wiser, but what's still interesting is why Last Action Hero specifically fails as a parody, especially since this failing is what drew me to it in 1993 and what is pushing me away 2 decades later. We do open with a bang, and a sly transition already cozying up against the fourth wall as every police car in the state gathers around a rooftop hostage situation. Being action movie canon fodder, they're locked into Helpless But Loud.
This is one hell of a way to spend Christmas. Okay!
Sir!
Secure the sidewalk! No one in out!
Yes, sir!
Until Jack Slater shows up, literally walking all over the police to get to the roof, where his son is at the mercy of the Ripper. There's already some awkward contradiction to the intention of the scene. We're supposed to be legitimately invested, but our metaphorical balloon of empathy is repeatedly punctured by pinpricks of parody, like Jack dumping a small army's worth of backup guns. But ironically, just at the moment of resolution, the movie loses focus. I should make so many jokes here. And we're pulled into the real world, where... Sidebar. Okay, kids in early 90s movies suck. It's a fact.
Hello?
It's relevant, but analytically uninteresting. So let's just all agree on that and just leave the little guy alone. Danny is a terminal fan of the Jack Slater series of action movies. In fact, pretty much his whole life is filtered through the lens of Slater.
To be or not to be? Not to be.
An addiction fueled by fellow devotee Nick, a projectionist who offers Danny a midnight sneak peek at Slater 4, which isn't creepy at all. Nick lets Danny into the movie with a golden ticket, complete with a story of how he got it from Harry Houdini.
Focus!
Danny settles in for Slater 4, which opens with Slater's favorite second cousin Frank being interrogated by mob boss Vivaldi, though it's clear his glass-eyed henchman Benedict is the power behind the throne. There's some lip service paid to a unification scheme consolidating Vice in California, but it's all action movie fluff to set up Frank's house exploding. During the ensuing car chase, Danny's magic ticket starts to do its thing and drops him violently into Slater's car. Oh, is Nick okay? Danny, with the requisite credulity of youth, almost immediately accepts the unreality of his situation and starts trying to convince Slater that they're both inside a movie. A barrage of slight and ceaseless gags commence, most sticking earnestly to genre convention, some kinda out of nowhere.
Hiya, toots.
Those fucking 80s genre movies and their animated cats, am I right? Still trying to convince Jack, Danny takes him to a video store.
Focus!
And then to Vivaldi's mansion, where they come eye to glass with Benedict, who picks up immediately on Danny's preternatural knowledge of the situation. Back at Slater's, we meet Winnie, his narratively useless daughter. We also find out what happened in the opening scene. Slater shot the Ripper, but his son was pulled over the side of the building. Benedict waits to barge in until it's just Danny and Winnie, but forgets about the pluckiness of genre girls and the omniscience of genre heroes.
Hi!
He escapes with one half of the golden ticket and starts to figure out his magical properties. Well, back at Slater's, a booby trap leads to a second house explosion, landing he and Danny in a backup apartment, just in time for some self-reflection.
I never started out to be anything but a decent cop. But I kept getting involved in these crazy adventures.
Focus!
We're into the build-up for a second-act climax where the movie completely loses steam. A gaudy rooftop funeral turns out to be Vivaldi's plan to eliminate the competition by using the corpse as a biological weapon. But this whole setup was at least partially predicated on our investment in the political maneuvers of the Mafia, and that was only ever presented as the superficial scaffolding of any generic action plot. We head into this massive set piece with zero stakes, because up until this point, everything has been in service of cracking jokes. Sure, we're marginally concerned as to whether Slater and Danny will live or die, but only as far as basic human empathy takes us, in no way augmented by narrative language. And frankly, when you've got animated cats voiced by Danny DeVito as convenient as Deus Ex Meowkinas, sorry, it's not like the danger is ever really real. It's a fairly common parody problem. Yes, heroes never get hit in shootouts, but overstating it for comedic effect just kills the tension. You know, make a sketch about it, not a feature-length movie. They managed to dispose of the booby-trapped corpse in a tar pit as Benedict disposes of Vivaldi.
They were writhing and screaming and leaping to their doom to escape the pain. No, not really, I'm lying. It was a complete and utter balls-up, and I've had a terrible day, thanks largely to you.
But Danny and Slater show up to tie up the last loose end. Still operating under movie logic, Benedict is powerless to stop them, but as he's still in possession of the golden ticket, Slater accidentally hurls him straight into the real world. It's worth noting that the movie is at about an hour and a half here. So far the beats have been by the books, inciting incident, first act climax, second act climax, third act climax, but we have a full 40 minutes of bloated runtime left, because in making a movie within a movie plot, they daringly but ultimately foolishly tried to make Jack Slater 4 its own entity. While Jack is taken from action hero to romantic lead by Danny's mom, Benedict is concocting a plan to recruit an army of movie villains and bring them into a place where
The bad guys can win!
First up is none other than the Ripper, who goes after Jack's real-world counterpart to negate his existence. Schwarzenegger, playing himself as a buffoon shilling Planet Hollywood, is accosted at the premiere of Slater 4, but Jack saves him, yells at him, then winds up in a real third-act climax in a parallel rooftop showdown, first with the Ripper, then Benedict himself. Benedict demonstrates his real-world adaptability.
Gee, did you make a movie mistake? You forgot to reload the damn gun. No, Jack. I just left one chamber empty.
Before succumbing to the omnipotence of a one-liner.
No sequel for you.
And after an interlude with death,
Focus!
Slater's back where his gunshot is only a flesh wound. And Danny's back in a theater chair cheering him on as Jack takes charge on screen. Oh, he didn't. Drives off into the sunset. Oh, he did. Parody is so tough to do well. Yeah, Last Action Hero hits a lot of pitfalls. Narrative, ideological, empathetic. You need to mock the narrative pitfalls of your source without letting them sink your own story. You can't succumb to making excuses for poor storytelling under the guise of intentional farce. After a while, you just stop caring.
Jack, it all makes sense.
No, actually makes absolutely no sense, but I'll try to explain to you.
Sure, pure genre subversion might have had a chance, but we're expected to hang on for a ride that takes us here, and then here.
Let's push his son off the building. Gives you nightmares the rest of your life. But you're fictional, so who cares?
They can't operate simultaneously, especially not with such a slapdash execution. Run through a gamut of writers and never given the proper ironing time in the edit room, Last Action Hero has the structural soundness of the first tape rail bridge. It's a thing, look it up. Danny's house gets burgled early on, great to push his reliance on safe movie reality, but not worth the runtime. Dragging Jack to a video store? Hey, sight gags abound, but it has nothing to do with the generic action movie plot they're supposed to be playing out. After the full arc of Slater 4 plays out, plus the setup for the real-world climax, there are way too many threads to tie up, killing the impact of any individually. Saving Schwarzenegger, and trying to give Benedict his due, and the Ripper coming back, and resolving the concurrent daddy-son issues with Jack and Danny, and Death showing up, and after all that, Slater ends with a speech about how he doesn't want to just be a guy with a gun anymore?
And you know something? I don't want to shoot people anymore and blow up buildings.
But Danny, and by extension we, never loved Arnie for his human side. The sentiment is in line with a Western moral compass, but not with genre convention, which should be the whole point. Because this was never about criticism, really, or we wouldn't be cheering this on. They didn't earn a subversive ending because they relied on hilarious gratuity. A little lip service paid to life getting harder and the emotional toll of a son's death doesn't negate things like this. And that tells us that in the end, violence in Slater's world should be okay, otherwise he is a psychopath. Last Action Hero's core audience should have been action junkies. Do you think they'll stick with you when Arnie renounces violence? And speaking of Arnie, in the best cases, parody is a sterling example of the genre it parodies as well as being a comment on it, but we need a degree of separation. You know what kicked ass? Galaxy Quest. You know what wouldn't have kicked ass? William Shatner in Galaxy Quest. Parody exists because of archetype and cliche, so loving and flattering as it may be, we're still on some level laughing at instead of with. But with this holy triumvirate of Shane Black, John McTiernan, and Arnold Schwarzenegger, that gets awkward. Because intentionally or not, it's like, hey guys, we're in on this too. We get it. We're in the club. It's a guy getting up for a round at their own roast. None of these guys were in any way desperate, but that's what it feels like. Rather than self-mocking, it's all self-congratulatory. Restaurant-centric Schwarzenegger would have made a cute cameo, but self-mockery has a low ceiling. The implied counterpoint with Slater's monologues about how his life just keeps getting more out of control, or when he finds out the emotional devastation of his son's death was just a plot point, it just makes things worse. We go from we get how silly we are to we are not silly. And all the while, it's Arnie, for God's sakes. The guy was not built to deliver emotive material. It's like it was barely for movie fans anymore. It was for, well, the Holy Triumvirate. Yeah, credit to them, though. They were not happy with it either. What I loved about the idea back in the day was that it's actually Arnie in this movie. And I think that represents the first stone of the avalanche, because Last Action Hero really sounds like it should be great. You respond viscerally to this lovely, silly concept, and it takes a lot of thought to figure out why it won't work, and a lot of will to not pretend the pitfalls are navigable, and even more to tell Arnold Schwarzenegger, who wants to star in your movie parodying Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, that, frankly, he does not fit the part.